I really cannot understand for the life of me why real-life NBA general managers think that real basketball is the same as 2K My League, and loading a roster with a bunch of high overall players on max deals guarantees a championship. I just don't get it. So, it's been almost a week since the Suns shook up the NBA offseason by acquiring Bradley Beal from the Wizards, and I initially held off on making a video because I wanted to do my due diligence on the deal, and I didn't want to make a reactionary type video with unsupported opinions and whatnot. But now, after combing through the data and breaking down how this team is constructed from top to bottom, I can safely say this is one of the dumbest trades I have ever seen for a multitude of reasons. Seriously. Before we get into the trade, hey folks, my name is Dylan Brett, and on this channel, we break down all things basketball from an in-depth analytical standpoint. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications for more basketball content just like this, and leave a comment down below with your thoughts on this huge deal. Now, jumping right into the deal itself, the Phoenix Suns acquired Bradley Beal, Isaiah Todd, and Jordan Goodwin from the Washington Wizards in exchange for Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, 6 second-round draft picks, and 4 first-round pick swaps. Wow, there's a lot to unpack here. Now, first I'm going to look at things from a pure talent standpoint, and from that standpoint, the Suns come out as absolute winners here. Adding a 23-point-per-game scorer with a 59% true shooting percentage to an offense that already ranked 3rd in the league in offensive rating looks like a phenomenal move on paper. Not to mention, I think Jordan Goodwin is a great player in the right role based on his efficiency stats, and Isaiah Todd was a 5-star recruit with an incredibly high ceiling. But back to Beal now, this trade appears all well and good on paper, but the problems begin to arise when you realize that real basketball is not played on paper. Like I said, this is such a 2K My League kind of trade that you make when your team just lost in the conference finals or the NBA finals or something. There's just so many things to consider aside from raw talent when constructing a championship caliber roster, and now nobody really has any clue how this offense is going to function next year. To put things as simply as possible, the main thing that the Suns are seemingly about to deal with is a classic case of one ball and 4 guys that need it syndrome. When you take a look at their new big 3 and their tendencies to dominate the ball, Devin Booker ranked 7th in the NBA in shot attempts per game, taking 20.4, while Kevin Durant ranked 17th with 18.7. With Bradley Beal and his 17.6 shots per game now joining the fray, that gives the Suns 3 players among the top 30 in that department, while no other team has that many in the top 50. When you look at this season's championship-winning Denver Nuggets team, a squad many believe to be beautifully constructed inside out, and how they were built, they didn't have a single player in the top 45 in field goal attempts per game, with Jamal Murray being their highest volume shooter at 47th, taking just over 16. Additionally, both Book and KD posted a usage rate around 28.3% last season, ranking 14th and 15th in the league respectively. Beal, on the other hand, finished with a mark of 29.2%, giving the Suns 3 players in the top 15. Once again, far more than any other NBA team. Oh yeah, and all 3 of these guys took at least 29% of their team's shots when on the court last season. This usage rate conundrum doesn't exactly bode well for a team when you look at the list of the most utilized single seasons of all time. In order to find the first NBA champion on that list, you'd have to scroll all the way down to 43rd, where you'd find Michael Jordan's 1993 season with a usage rate of 34%. And by the way, MJ is the only guy with a single season usage rate in the top 150 to win a title in the same year. To make matters even more concerning for Phoenix, KD took 44.2% of his shots on at least 4 dribbles last season, while Devin Booker was among the league's most dribble-happy scorers with 51% of his attempts coming after at least 4 dribbles. Adding Beal, who also attempted over half of his shots in that scenario, certainly doesn't bode well for Phoenix's floor spacing next season, especially without a definitive primary facilitator on the roster at the moment. Unless Devin Booker's 28.3% assist rate can carry the load for the entire season, the next closest player on the roster in terms of assist rate is KD, all the way down at 17.3. Now, the immense shot volume of these 3 stars wouldn't be an issue, say if you had a 5-time assist champion point guard that tallied 9 dimes per game this past year to space the floor, but where on earth would they be able to find a guy like that? Not to mention, this team's depth was one of the primary reasons they failed to succeed in the playoffs and get over the hump over the past few years, not their star power. In this year's playoffs, the Suns ranked 12th in bench minutes per game, 15th in bench points per game, and 13th in bench shooting percentage. The stars like KD and Book were playing over 42 minutes a game in the playoffs and were visibly gassed at the end of the games in the latter parts of the Nuggets series. All this coming while the Nuggets bench outscored the Suns bench in every single game of the series. This trade ultimately just strikes me as a young rookie owner attempting to make a splash and put his fingerprints on the team, as we've seen so many times before in the NBA. However, as a result of this, Matt Ishbia and company have made this blockbuster trade while remaining completely oblivious to the team's glaring needs, and there is now no definitive answer to how Phoenix is going to address those needs or piece this roster together over the next few months. Now, while piecing this roster together on the court is still a topic of intense discussion, things get even more concerning when you look at the logistics of this deal off the court and on the financial side of things. With the NBA luxury tax threshold projected to be around $162 million next season, the Suns' big four of Durant, Booker, Beal, and Ayton already eclipses that number with a staggering combined salary of $162,866,661. These four players are owed a combined $729 million that are fully guaranteed through 2026, giving the Suns by far the least long-term flexibility in the league, considering they don't have control of a single draft pick until 2031. Not to mention that by the back end of these deals, Beal will be 34 and Durant will be 39, which doesn't exactly bode well for a team with the Suns' level of flexibility or lack thereof at all. As a whole, Phoenix's current total payroll sits at approximately $173,130,653, which looks about right in comparison to the league's other big spenders, until you realize that they only have 8 players currently on the roster. To make matters even worse for the Suns, the new CBA that will be implemented over the next 2 years includes a new second luxury tax apron of $179.5 million, which will essentially bar teams that go over from using things such as mid-level exceptions. This basically means if they can't stay under that figure, the Suns will be unable to sign free agents to anything above the league minimum salary, which is just absolutely wild to think about. Now, enough ragging on the Suns, I want to talk about Washington's side of the deal very quickly, and many have been quick to criticize the Wizards for the moves they made this offseason, but to me it looks like the new regime of Michael Winger and Will Dawkins is certainly doing their best with a tough hand that they've been dealt. The Beal contract was absolutely not their idea and presented a huge unmovable problem that they inherited when taking over the team, and shipping them off to start over with a blank slate was probably the responsible thing to do. People also seem to forget that Beal had a strict no-trade clause in his mega deal, meaning not only did he have to approve of the team he was going to, but he had to approve of the trade package being sent to Washington in return. As a result, the package that they were going to get in return was far less valuable than they could have received had Beal not had that NTC in his contract. Not to mention, the Wizards certainly made the best of the situation, as they were able to then flip Chris Paul from this trade into 24-year-old Jordan Poole and a pair of first-round picks from the Warriors. They then proceeded to pick up cheap role options like Tyus Jones, Danilo Gallinari, and others in the Kristaps Porzingis deal, which will pay dividends in the future. With general manager Will Dawkins coming over from Oklahoma City this year, based on how the rebuild is unfolded over there, I think the blueprint is clear for the Wizards going forward. Their goals right now are to stock up on 2 things, assets and flexibility. After numerous failed trades and a futile attempt to contend from a regime that was seemingly in denial that they had to rebuild, this new front office has begun the process of slowly but surely replenishing Washington's depleted stockpile of draft picks and young talent. The one pet peeve that I always have with the NBA offseason is that people in my field of work immediately feel the need to slap a grade on all these major deals and assess the quote-unquote winners and losers of the transaction. And when it comes to a deal like this, I just don't think that way of thinking is fair at all. For as much as I've criticized Phoenix and their way of thinking in this video, if they win a championship in the next year or two, they're pretty much immune to all that criticism, their future be damned. We're starting to see these teams on the precipice of a title that might have just gotten knocked out in the playoffs begin to go all in and sacrifice their future for the short term all across sports nowadays. Notable teams to follow this school of thought include the LA Rams with guys like Matt Stafford and Jalen Ramsey, and the New York Mets with guys like Scherzer and Verlander. Now, I don't want to be that guy, but moves like this are eerily reminiscent of the infamous Brooklyn Nets deal for the Celtics' Big Three back in 2013. I'm just saying, I hope I'm wrong. Anyways, the Suns have pushed all their chips to the middle as they attempt to sell their souls for their first ever title, and we should be able to gauge the success of this gamble sooner rather than later. If they're unable to reap the benefits of their high-risk, high-reward moves, a dark cloud could be looming over this franchise for the foreseeable future. But as I said, only time will tell how things end up for the Suns. Until then, enjoy the offseason, folks.